Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, Jesse with the Common Nerd, bringing you pop culture and all things nerd theory, comments, and sons. And Netflix has very much been kind of a mixed bag when it comes to their adaptations, right? We got things like One Piece that were absolutely wonderful, and a lot of fans really enjoyed them, and they were a huge success. And then we had other things out there like, I don't know, the Cleopatra, quote-unquote, documentary history thingy-mabobber, the drama-mentary or whatever they had to call it. And then, of course, there's so many other adaptations of some of the animes we've seen and things like that that were just absolutely abysmal. Cowboy Bebop, anyone. But at the end of the day, sometimes it kind of ends up being a mixed bag, and I always look at it as a kind of a lens through of it all just depends on who's behind it and who's working on something. When it comes to the Chronicles of Narnia, I was initially kind of interested in seeing what Netflix could pull off, but then when I heard that the Barbie chick that was behind the Barbie movie, Greta Gerwig, was going to be attached to all of this, I was like, oh no, this is going to be absolutely bad. It is definitely not somebody who I trust with such a prolific Christian author like C.S. Lewis's work in any way, shape, or form. And well, it looks like, boys and girls, because of incredibly stupid publishing mistakes back in the 90s, it looks like Netflix is going to do another huge mistake by making one book before all of the rest. And even though chronological order, it is actually the very first one from a narrative perspective, it does not work in any way, shape, or form. And this is obviously just some leaked kind of technically rumor information out there. But it does line up pretty well with some of the things that Greta Gerwig has said in the past out there, what Netflix has been talking about, and needless to say, from a narrative perspective, boys and girls, we're going to explain to you why this does not work in any way, shape, or form, and will ruin the magic and the mystery of The Lion and the Witch and the Wardrobe series. So we're going to check out this article from Fandom Pulse, getting all of the juicy details and see exactly what's going on and why everybody expects this to be the fact. But before we do, if you do enjoy our content, hit that like button, share it with all your friends, and subscribe or follow if you have not already, boys and girls, because we are grinding, we are growing, and I could not do that without every single one of you. We just crossed 1,600. We're inching our way close to 1,700, and we really appreciate your help if you could get us over that hump. Also, leave us a comment in the section down below. Are you cautiously optimistic about this Netflix adaptation of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe series? Do you think Greta Gerwig can actually put her own identity politics nonsense aside and give us a good quality adaptation, or do you think this is going to be a disastrous dumpster fire right from the get-go? Let us know what you think about all that in the comment section down below. And if you'd like to support the channel, please check out the links in the description as well. All right, from Fandom Pulse and our dear sweet John F. Trent. Alleged audition dialogue seemingly reveals which C.S. Lewis book Greta Gerwig is adapting for Netflix. And some of the rumors that we'd initially heard was like Voyage of the Dawn Treader, and that she was going to do a movie and it wasn't going to be part of like the series because apparently they wanted to adapt certain books into like an actual television series and do other books with a movie. Like the reports have been really kind of wild, and Netflix really hasn't given us any good clarification on what they're actually doing with this. But like I said, this doesn't sound like a good sign to me. Alleged auditions dialogue has reportedly been obtained that points to the Chronicles of Narnia books Barbie director Greta Gerwig is adapting for Netflix. Yeah, the one that everybody thought was oh so funny, which was literally just a tirade against men and all things masculine. Yeah, exactly. Narnia Web reports they obtained audition dialogue between two characters codenamed Isidore and Franny, what that they believe are Diggory and Polly from Lewis's The Magician's Nephew novel. The outlet adds, the dynamic between Franny and Isidore resembles Diggory and Polly's first encounter in the book where they argue over their names. And literally, it's not something that you could mistake from any other argument than any of the books. This is something that's directly from the pages. Obviously, the lines are different, but the experience, the actual interaction is something you only see between these two characters throughout the entire series. And honestly, doing The Magician's Nephew first is a very, very bad idea, but we'll get to that here in a second. So here's the dialogue. Franny, what have you got there? Isidore says nothing. Yes, you do. You've got something. I saw you playing with it, and now it's all shut up in your hand. I found it. It's mine. Can I see it? Do you want to see it or touch it? Touch it, dummy. But literally see it means literally my foot. Let me see it. Will you give it back after? Of course. I'm not like all the others. I don't know what you are or aren't. I'm Franny, which you would have known if you'd have asked. I'm Isidore. That's a girl's name. It isn't. I like it. It's just that it's a name for girls. Isadora is for a girl. Isidore is for me. It was my great-grandfather's name. Do you know him? Yes, for a little. I never met my great-grandfather or my grandfather or my father. Everyone I know is dead. I'm sorry. Don't. I never knew them. Nothing to miss. I've never seen ones like this before. It's almost like you could see another world inside it. Where did you find it? See other worlds inside? For any of us that actually read The Magician's Nephew, this is some pretty good examples as well. Just on the pavement, Franny says, I don't have any friends. I won't tell. Isidore says, I don't have any friends either. Franny says, you do now. Aw, very sweet, very nice interaction. Doesn't sound like it's too bad. Doesn't sound like it's too overbearing. We don't know if this is actually going to make it into the movie itself or if they're going to change dialogues. Like I said, this is just a reading. This is a test screening. And obviously take all of this with a grain of salt. It is just a rumor mill. So in The Magician's Nephew, the book opens with Polly coming across Diggory. Lewis wrote, "Hello," said Polly. "Hello," said the boy. "What's your name?" "Polly." "What's yours?" "Diggory." I say, what a funny name. It isn't half so funny as Polly. Yes, it is. No, it isn't. At any rate, I do wash my face, which is what you need to do, especially after. And then she stopped. She'd been going to say, after you've been blubbering, but she thought that wouldn't be polite. "All right, I have then," said Diggory in a much louder voice, like a boy who was so miserable that he didn't care who knew he'd been crying. "And so would you," he went on, "if you lived all your life in the country and had a pony and a river and at the bottom of the garden and then had been brought to live in a beastly hole like this." Now, obviously, the back and forth over the name thing is kind of the interaction that we're kind of highlighting on here, and it's one of them situations where this is one of the reasons why it points directly to the Magician's Nephew. These are the only two characters we see act like this back and forth, especially on their very first meeting out there, ladies and gentlemen. Here's my problem with all of this in this article as well. It's not surprising Netflix would adapt The Magician's Nephew first. It was previously revealed by Star Trek Discovery actor Jason Isaacs that Gerwig and Netflix would adapt The Magician's Nephew first. And that I actually hadn't heard, but that's kind of crazy to think about. Isaac spoke to The Week, where he shared all his favorite books that we were reading at Christ Church Cathedral, Oxford, for Macmillan Cancer Support. One of the books he chose is The Magician's Nephew, and he explained why, telling the outlet, "I loved all of the Narnia books as a kid, but when Peter was told he wouldn't be coming back, I understood something devastating about mortality. Mortality. I picked this one because Greta is about to make a film of it, which I can't wait to see." Obviously confirming that. Now they're going to go on down here to talk about The Magician's Nephew is the first book chronologically in Narnia, and Lewis himself recommended that the proper order the books he read in. Now here's my only problem with this, is if you go check out, highly recommend a great channel out there if you're into any of the kind of Narnia universe and that kind of stuff. Into the Wardrobe is a great, very Christian-based channel on this. The guy does a great example of explaining all this stuff, and he explains to you why the when they kind of like made it kind of like the American version, the chronology that they changed in the 90s out there, and then they put it in chronological order versus publishing order. Like this is a conflicting report. This is about from one letter, but also C.S. Lewis himself says in other letters out there as well that the publication date might be better for the story flow out there as well. He had one of his books done, which chronologically was the next book, but he felt that he actually had it held back by the publisher because he wanted, for the storytelling purposes and for the flow of the story to work, which is why it's a problem with doing The Magician's Nephew first. As a really good friend of mine, Griffin, pointed out in the chat while we were talking about all this kind of stuff, was the fact that it really, if you do The Magician's Nephew first, it kind of ruins the mystique, because if you haven't read The Magician's Nephew, spoiler alert, The Magician's Nephew is actually where you discover multiple worlds, and he goes through all these different places and all of that other kind of stuff, right? So now you kind of lose the magic of the first time one of the girls walks into Narnia, when she walks through the wardrobe and goes to this new mystical and fabulous place, because you're like, well, we already know there's other worlds, so it's not really surprising, it's not really shocking. So from a narrative perspective, it really kind of ruins things. And it's also the same situation with some of the other books that come after The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. If you actually do the publishing order, the third book that comes out actually carries on with two characters from The Lion and the Witch Wardrobe, which is, if you do it chronologically, it goes to something completely and totally different, and kind of throws you off to entirely from a reader's perspective out there, because then you're like, well, where are all the characters I just knew and loved in this last book? Why am I having to deal with a whole new cadre of people? It just doesn't flow very well narratively. So there are plenty of arguments out there. If you don't believe me, like I said, go check out Into the Wardrobe's video over how the book should actually be read. I know I went out of my way at Christmas this year for my kids. I actually went on eBay and ordered one of the editions from the 70s that actually had them in publishing order and not chronologically order, because I know I had problems reading them as a kid, even though I love this series and I love a lot of these worlds and I love C.S. Lewis, especially the Screwtape Letters. Go read that at some point. It's one of them situations where it was really hard for me to get into the narrative, and I'm not even entirely sure if I completely and totally finished the series, which would be extremely unusual for me as a kid, because I was literally like a fat kid through a buffet, like with books. Like it was just, I would go through them like nobody's business. So I might have read them, but it didn't stick with me very well, like a lot of other things, because like I said, the story feels misjointed when you do that. But they're going to go through and give some of these articles and all of this kind of stuff. But like I said, there's a great version out there to go out there and check all of this kind of stuff out. So Gresham, who runs the Lewis estate, stuck the deal with Netflix to adapt the novels. Like I said, I don't feel like this is a good sign. If this is true, this is a rumor. I don't feel like this is a good direction for the series to go to. I think they do need to do it in publishing order, but I'm not in charge of the thing. All I can do is come to you from a fan perspective and tell them what I would like to see and what I would actually like to see them pull off with this kind of thing. And unfortunately, with someone like Greta Gerwig, who is really very much about her identity politics and all the rest of her nonsense out there, I really don't expect very much from somebody with that kind of worldview when they're trying to adapt a Christian work by a Christian author. Because Chronicles of Narnia is absolutely a Christian story. Aslan is absolutely a representation for Jesus Christ. It is very obvious when you read the books. That was one of Tolkien's only critiques on the series as well. Could he have been a little more on the nose with the allegory? You know, like Tolkien liked to keep it a little more subtle, keep the subtext a little more, a little more spread out and all of that kind of stuff. Where like C.S. Lewis is like, I'm just going to tell you straight up what all of this is about. And I love that. It's a majesty of these books. They're absolutely wonderful. Read them in the publishing order if you can get the chance, get a hold of them at a set like that. And probably for the best nature, unless, who knows, boys and girls, I would love to be wrong about this. I would love for Greta Gerwig to actually come in and do a proper adaptation and give us a good, proper adaptation of the C.S. Lewis books out there. Give us the true heart of the story, let the Christian values shine through that they do so well in those books. But honestly, considering the identity politics nonsense that woman travels in, those worlds that she travels in all the time, I don't trust anybody over there. And Netflix just kind of lets these people do what they want. They hire them because they're a fancy name on something. Needless to say, boys and girls, I think if they're really are doing The Magician's Nephew first, which seems all indications are pointing in that general direction out there, I think it's going to be a major misstep for the whole storytelling, and I think it's going to end up screwing a lot of the magic and the majesty that this Chronicles of Narnia books encapsulate for so many young audience viewers out there and for so many young readers, and for those of us adults that go back and get to enjoy them again. It's one of those things where I don't trust Netflix when it comes to this, and I certainly don't trust Greta Gerwig, and the fact that they're going in The Magician's Nephew for the very first one is just another sign that this thing is probably going to turn into a disastrous dumpster fire, and well, Netflix, you'll get what you deserve. Make the fans happy. We'll make you rich. If you decide to absolutely let Greta Gerwig bastardize all of the great C.S. Lewis's work, well, you will certainly hear from us, and your audience ratings, your score, and your viewership numbers will reflect it. After all, go woke, go broke.